If you are over 60 years old and you have been struggling to keep your blood pressure under control, there is something you need to hear right now. Some of the habits you believe are completely harmless, or maybe even healthy, could be silently pushing your numbers higher every single day. And the worst part is that most people have no idea they are doing it until they end up in my office after a serious health scare. I have seen this happen far too many times in my years as a cardiovascular specialist. Patients come in confused, frustrated, telling me they thought they were doing everything right. And when we dig deeper into their daily routines, we uncover habits that have been working against them for years, sometimes decades. Before we dive into this important information, if you have not subscribed to this channel yet, I recommend hitting that subscribe button and turning on notifications so you never miss another health tip made especially for you. And if you find this video helpful, please leave your questions and video suggestions in the comments, because I read every single one of them, and it helps me create more content that can help people just like you. Now, let me tell you about someone who taught me a lot about these hidden habits. Her name was Mrs. Dorothy Caldwell, a 74-year-old retired school teacher from Portland, Oregon. Dorothy had been managing her blood pressure for about 12 years when she first came to see me. She was on medication, she walked every morning, and she genuinely believed she was doing everything her doctors had ever told her. But her numbers kept creeping up. 140/90, 145/92, then 150/95. Her previous doctors kept adjusting her medication, adding new pills, increasing doses. But nobody ever asked her about her daily habits in detail. When I sat down with Dorothy for nearly an hour during our first consultation, we discovered 4 habits that were sabotaging all her efforts. Within 3 months of addressing these issues, her blood pressure dropped to 128/82 without adding a single new medication. She actually reduced her dosage with her doctor's supervision. That is why I want to share this with you today. Because the problem might not be your medication, it might not be your genetics. It might be something you are doing every single day without realizing its impact. Let us start with the first habit that raises blood pressure in seniors, and this one surprises almost everyone I tell it to. The first dangerous habit is eating too much bread and processed carbohydrates. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You have heard about salt, about fatty foods, about red meat. But bread? Yes, bread. And crackers. And pasta. And all those convenient processed carbohydrates that have become such a big part of the modern diet. Here is what happens in your body when you eat these foods. They break down very quickly into sugar. Your blood sugar spikes, and your body releases insulin to manage that spike. When this happens repeatedly, day after day, year after year, it leads to something we call insulin resistance. And here is where it connects to blood pressure. Insulin resistance causes your body to retain sodium. It damages the delicate lining of your blood vessels. It promotes inflammation throughout your cardiovascular system. All of these effects push your blood pressure higher. I remember Mr. Raymond Fletcher, a 68-year-old retired postal worker from Denver, Colorado. Raymond was a widower who lived alone, and like many people in his situation, he had developed some convenient eating habits over the years. Toast with butter for breakfast, a sandwich for lunch, pasta or rice with dinner, maybe some crackers while watching television in the evening. He was not eating junk food. He was not eating fast food. These seemed like reasonable, normal meals. But when Raymond came to me with blood pressure readings consistently around 155/98, despite being on 2 medications, we had to look deeper. His diet was providing him with the equivalent of nearly 20 teaspoons of sugar every day, just from those bread and pasta sources. His fasting insulin levels were elevated. His inflammatory markers were high. We worked together to gradually reduce his processed carbohydrate intake. We replaced his morning toast with eggs and vegetables. His lunch sandwich became a salad with grilled chicken. His evening pasta became grilled fish with roasted vegetables. Within 8 weeks, his blood pressure had dropped to 136/86. He told me he also had more energy than he had felt in years and had lost 14 pounds without feeling like he was on a diet. The second habit that silently raises blood pressure is one that many seniors fall into without even realizing it. It is becoming too sedentary between activities. Now, you might exercise in the morning, you might take a walk, you might even go to a fitness class. But what happens during the other 23 hours of your day? Research has shown us something remarkable in recent years. It is not just about whether you exercise. It is about how much time you spend completely still. When you sit for extended periods, your blood vessels stiffen, your circulation slows down, your body's ability to regulate blood pressure becomes impaired. And here is the really important part. A morning workout does not fully undo the damage of sitting for 6, 8, or 10 hours during the rest of the day. Mrs. Patricia Hoffman was a 71-year-old grandmother from Minneapolis, Minnesota, who learned this lesson in a way she never expected. Patricia was actually quite active by most standards. She attended water aerobics 3 times a week. She gardened in the summer. She considered herself a healthy, active person. But between those activities, she spent hours sitting in her recliner reading, watching her programs, and doing crossword puzzles. Her blood pressure had been gradually climbing despite her exercise routine, and she could not understand why. When we analyzed her daily movement patterns, we found she was averaging nearly 11 hours of sedentary time per day. Even with her exercise classes, the prolonged sitting was taking its toll. We implemented a simple change. Every 30 minutes during her sedentary time, she would stand up, walk around her house for just 2 minutes, maybe do a few gentle stretches. That is it. No additional exercise classes, no gym membership, just breaking up her sitting time with brief movement. After 12 weeks, Patricia's blood pressure had improved from 144/90 to 130/84. She told me her legs felt less stiff, her energy was better throughout the day, and she was sleeping more soundly at night. All from adding these tiny movement breaks that totaled maybe 30 extra minutes of standing and walking throughout her day. If you are finding this information helpful, I would love it if you could comment below and let me know. Just type a simple message to show you are here with me. It really helps me understand what content resonates with you. And honestly, it motivates me to keep creating these videos. The third habit that pushes blood pressure higher is one that becomes more common as we age, and it is related to stress. But not in the way you might think. I am talking about chronic low-grade worry and the habit of dwelling on problems, especially at night. As we get older, we often face more concerns, health worries, financial concerns, concerns about our children and grandchildren, grief from losing friends and loved ones. These are real and valid concerns. But when we develop a habit of ruminating, of turning these worries over and over in our minds, especially during the hours when we should be sleeping, it creates a physiological response that directly affects blood pressure. When you worry, your body releases stress hormones, cortisol, adrenaline. These hormones cause your blood vessels to constrict. They make your heart beat faster. They tell your kidneys to retain more fluid. In short bursts, this is not harmful. But when it becomes a chronic pattern, when you lie awake at night with your mind racing through every concern, your cardiovascular system never gets the chance to fully rest and reset. Mr. Walter Simmons was a 76-year-old retired accountant from Cincinnati, Ohio, who understood stress from a professional standpoint. He had spent decades dealing with tax deadlines and financial pressures, but retirement had not brought him the peace he expected. Instead, he found himself worrying about different things: his wife's health, whether their savings would last, news events, his grandchildren's futures. Walter's blood pressure had become increasingly difficult to control. Some days it would be reasonable, around 135/85. Other days, seemingly without explanation, it would spike to 155/95. When we talked in detail, I asked him about his sleep patterns. He admitted that he often lay awake for hours, sometimes not falling asleep until 2 or 3 in the morning, his mind churning through various concerns. We worked on what I call sleep hygiene and worry management. Walter started keeping a worry journal, writing down his concerns in the early evening rather than carrying them to bed. He learned some simple breathing techniques to use when his mind started racing. He stopped watching news programs after 7 in the evening. He established a calming bedtime routine with herbal tea and gentle music. The transformation was remarkable. Within 6 weeks, Walter was sleeping through most nights. His blood pressure became much more stable, averaging around 128/80. He told me he felt like a different person, like a weight had been lifted that he had been carrying for years without fully realizing it. The fourth and final habit that raises blood pressure is something that seems completely harmless, even healthy. It is drinking too little water and relying on other beverages instead. Many seniors develop this habit gradually. Maybe they drink coffee in the morning, tea in the afternoon, perhaps a glass of wine in the evening. They might have a soda with lunch. But plain water becomes something they rarely consume. Here is why this matters for blood pressure. When you are even mildly dehydrated, your blood becomes thicker, more concentrated. Your heart has to work harder to pump this thicker blood through your body. Your blood vessels constrict to maintain pressure with less fluid volume. Your kidneys struggle to flush out excess sodium properly. All of these mechanisms push blood pressure higher. Additionally, many of the beverages people substitute for water actually work against hydration. Coffee and tea have diuretic effects. Alcohol significantly increases dehydration. Even some fruit juices can have effects on blood pressure through their sugar content. Mrs. Eleanor Patterson was a 72-year-old former nurse from Atlanta, Georgia, who should have known better, as she often told me herself. Eleanor had worked in healthcare her entire career. She understood the importance of hydration intellectually. But after retirement, her habits had shifted. She started her day with 2 cups of coffee. She might have sweet tea with lunch. Maybe a diet soda in the afternoon, wine with dinner. But actual plain water had become rare in her daily intake. When Eleanor came to me with blood pressure readings around 148/92 despite being on medication, we reviewed everything. Her diet was reasonable. She walked regularly. She took her medications consistently. But when I asked her to track her fluid intake for a week, the picture became clear. She was consuming barely 3 cups of actual water per day, while getting 6 to 8 cups of other beverages that were either dehydrating her or not hydrating her effectively. We set a simple goal: 8 glasses of plain water per day, spread throughout the day, in addition to whatever other beverages she chose to have. Eleanor started carrying a water bottle with her everywhere. She set gentle reminders on her phone. She drank a full glass first thing every morning and a full glass before each meal. After just 4 weeks, her blood pressure had dropped to 132/84. She told me her skin looked better, her digestion had improved, and she felt less foggy in the afternoons. The simple act of proper hydration had made a significant difference. Now I promised you 4 habits that can help keep your blood pressure low, and I want to deliver on that promise. Because it is not enough to just know what to avoid. You need to know what to embrace. But before we continue, if you are still watching and finding this valuable, I would be so grateful if you could hit that like button. It takes just a second, and it helps this video reach more people who might be struggling with their blood pressure. And truly, there is nothing more rewarding for me than knowing this information is helping people take control of their health. The first healthy habit that helps lower blood pressure is eating potassium-rich foods every single day. Potassium works directly against sodium in your body. It helps relax blood vessel walls. It helps your kidneys flush out excess sodium. It helps regulate the fluid balance that affects blood pressure. And most adults, especially seniors, are not getting nearly enough of it. The foods that provide the most potassium are often simple and affordable. Bananas are well known, but there are even better sources. Leafy green vegetables like spinach and Swiss chard, potatoes, including sweet potatoes, beans and lentils, avocados, tomatoes and tomato products, fish like salmon and tuna. Mr. Harold Jenkins was a 69-year-old retired firefighter from Phoenix, Arizona, who made this one change with remarkable results. Harold had been battling high blood pressure for nearly 15 years. He was on 3 different medications. He had tried low-sodium diets without much success. But his potassium intake was very low, averaging around 1,500 milligrams per day when the goal should be closer to 4,700 milligrams. We worked with a nutritionist to increase Harold's potassium intake through food, not supplements. He started having a banana with breakfast, a large salad with spinach and beans at lunch, a baked potato or sweet potato with dinner, snacking on a handful of dried apricots instead of his usual crackers. Within 3 months, Harold's blood pressure had dropped from 152/94 to 134/82. His doctor was able to reduce him to just 1 blood pressure medication instead of 3. Harold told me he wished someone had told him about this decades earlier. The second healthy habit is practicing slow, deep breathing for just 5 to 10 minutes every day. This might sound too simple to be effective, but the science behind it is solid. When you breathe slowly and deeply, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. This is the part of your nervous system responsible for rest and relaxation. It directly opposes the stress response that raises blood pressure. There are specific techniques that work particularly well. One approach is to breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4, hold for a count of 7, and exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 8. Another approach is simply to focus on making your exhale longer than your inhale, which naturally activates relaxation responses. Mrs. Virginia Coleman was a 77-year-old retired librarian from Seattle, Washington, who was skeptical when I first suggested this. Virginia was a practical woman. She wanted practical solutions. Breathing exercises seemed almost too simple to her, but she agreed to try it as an experiment. Every morning after waking up, Virginia spent 10 minutes doing slow breathing exercises. Every evening before bed, she did another 10 minutes. She used a simple app on her phone that guided her through the breathing patterns. At first, she found it difficult to quiet her mind and focus on her breath, but within a week it became easier. Within 2 weeks, she actually looked forward to these calm moments. After 8 weeks, Virginia's blood pressure readings had dropped from 140/88 to 124/78. She told me the breathing practice had become one of the most valuable parts of her day. She felt calmer overall, slept better, and had fewer headaches than she had experienced in years. The third healthy habit is getting morning sunlight within the first hour of waking. This might seem unrelated to blood pressure, but the connection is real and significant. Morning light exposure helps regulate your circadian rhythm, which affects many aspects of your health, including blood pressure regulation. Your body naturally has a blood pressure pattern that follows your sleep-wake cycle. When this rhythm is disrupted, blood pressure control suffers. Morning light exposure also increases your body's production of nitric oxide, a compound that helps relax and widen blood vessels. It supports vitamin D production, which plays a role in cardiovascular health. And it improves sleep quality, which, as we discussed, is crucial for blood pressure management. Mr. Benjamin Turner was a 73-year-old retired engineer from Boston, Massachusetts, who had developed a habit common among seniors. He would wake up, stay in his dimly lit bedroom, have breakfast indoors, and often not go outside until late morning or afternoon, if at all. His blood pressure had been hovering around 145/90 despite medication and lifestyle changes. We implemented a simple morning routine. Within 30 minutes of waking, Benjamin would go outside for a 15-minute walk. If the weather was bad, he would sit by a bright window with his morning coffee. The key was getting that natural light exposure early in the day. After 12 weeks, Benjamin's blood pressure had improved to 130/82. But he reported something else that surprised him even more. His energy levels throughout the day were better. He felt more alert in the mornings. His mood had improved noticeably. The morning light exposure had benefits far beyond just his blood pressure. The fourth healthy habit that helps maintain lower blood pressure is maintaining strong social connections and engaging in regular, meaningful conversation. This might seem like soft advice in a world of medications and medical interventions, but the research on this is compelling. Social isolation and loneliness have direct physiological effects on blood pressure. They increase stress hormones. They promote inflammation. They disrupt sleep patterns. They can lead to depression, which itself affects cardiovascular health. Conversely, regular positive social interaction reduces stress hormones, promotes the release of oxytocin, which has cardiovascular benefits, and provides emotional support that helps buffer against life's challenges. Mrs. Ruth Anderson was a 79-year-old widow from San Diego, California, whose blood pressure became increasingly difficult to control after her husband passed away 3 years before I met her. She had slowly withdrawn from social activities. She rarely saw friends. Her children lived in other states and called once a week at most. She spent most of her time alone with the television. Ruth's blood pressure was averaging 150/95, and no adjustment to her medications seemed to help. When we talked about her daily life, the picture of isolation was clear. We discussed options for increasing her social engagement. Ruth joined a book club at her local library. She started attending a gentle exercise class at the senior center, not for the exercise so much as for the social contact. She reconnected with a college friend, and they began having weekly phone calls. She even started volunteering at a local school, helping children with reading. The transformation in Ruth was profound. Within 4 months, her blood pressure had dropped to 132/82. She told me she felt like she had a reason to get up in the morning again. She was sleeping better, eating better, and felt less anxious about her health. The medication that had not been working before suddenly seemed more effective because her whole body was in a better state to respond to it. I want to share one more story that brings together many of these elements because I think it illustrates how powerful these changes can be when combined. Mr. George Hamilton was an 81-year-old retired mechanic from Nashville, Tennessee, who came to me after being hospitalized for a hypertensive crisis. His blood pressure had spiked to 190/110, and it frightened him badly. He had been on blood pressure medication for over 20 years, and despite taking his pills religiously, his control had gotten worse and worse over time. When I met George, he was discouraged. He told me he had given up hope of ever having normal blood pressure. He assumed it was just his genetics, just his age, just something he had to live with. But when we went through his daily life in detail, we found all 4 of the harmful habits we discussed today. George ate toast every morning because it was easy to prepare alone. He sat in his recliner most of the day watching television because his knees bothered him and he did not feel motivated to move. He worried constantly at night about being a burden to his daughter and about what would happen if his health declined further. And he drank mostly coffee and sweet tea because plain water seemed boring to him. Over the next several months, we addressed each of these issues one at a time. We started with hydration because it was the easiest change. George began keeping a pitcher of water in his refrigerator with lemon slices to make it more appealing. He committed to drinking a glass before each meal and one before bed. Next, we tackled his sedentary habits. Given his knee problems, we could not ask him to take long walks. Instead, we implemented the standing breaks every 30 minutes and added some simple chair exercises he could do while watching television. His daughter bought him a small pedal exerciser he could use while sitting. Then we worked on his diet. His daughter helped him prepare egg muffins on Sunday that he could reheat during the week for breakfast. She stocked his refrigerator with bananas, potatoes, and pre-washed spinach for salads. We did not ask him to give up everything he enjoyed, just to shift the balance. Finally, we addressed his nighttime worry. George started attending a men's group at his church twice a week. He reconnected with old friends from his mechanic days. He learned some breathing techniques and started listening to calming music before bed instead of the late-night news programs that had been increasing his anxiety. The results were nothing short of remarkable. 6 months after our first meeting, George's blood pressure was averaging 126/78. His doctor had reduced his medication from 3 pills to 1. He had lost 18 pounds without trying to diet. He told me he felt 10 years younger and that he wished someone had explained these connections to him decades ago. George's story reminds me why I became a doctor in the first place. not just to prescribe medications, but to help people understand their bodies and take control of their health. The human body has an incredible capacity to heal and regulate itself when we give it the right conditions. I also want to mention something important about how these habits interact with each other. When you improve your hydration, you often sleep better. When you sleep better, you worry less. When you worry less, your blood vessels relax. When your blood vessels relax, exercise feels easier. When exercise feels easier, you move more. When you move more, you want to eat better. Each positive change supports the others in a beautiful cycle of improving health. The same is unfortunately true in the opposite direction. Poor sleep leads to more stress. More stress leads to poor food choices. Poor food choices lead to less energy. Less energy leads to more sedentary time. More sedentary time leads to worse sleep. This is why many people feel stuck in a cycle of declining health. Breaking that cycle at any point can start to reverse it. Another patient who taught me this lesson was Mrs. Florence Mitchell, a 67-year-old retired dental hygienist from Charlotte, North Carolina. Florence came to me frustrated because she had been trying to make healthy changes for years, but nothing seemed to stick. She would start exercising but give up after a few weeks. She would try to eat better but fall back into old patterns. She felt like a failure at managing her health. Florence's blood pressure was around 142/88, not severely elevated but high enough to concern her doctors. She was on one medication that helped but did not get her to optimal levels. Rather than asking Florence to change everything at once, which had failed before, we picked just one habit to focus on. We chose the morning sunlight and walking because it combined two of our healthy habits in one activity. Every morning, Florence would go outside within 30 minutes of waking and walk around her neighborhood for 15 minutes. That was it. No other changes initially. After 4 weeks, something interesting happened. Florence started sleeping better. She woke up feeling more refreshed. She had more energy during the day. Without being asked to, she started making better food choices because she felt more motivated. She naturally began drinking more water because she was more active. She started calling her friends more often because her improved mood made her want to connect. By the 3-month mark, Florence had lost 12 pounds, her blood pressure had dropped to 128/80, and she was considering asking her doctor about reducing her medication. All from starting with just one simple habit that created momentum for everything else. As we come to the end of our time together today, I want to leave you with some important thoughts. Blood pressure management is not just about taking your pills and hoping for the best. It is about understanding how your daily habits, the small choices you make every single day, can either support your health or work against it. The 4 habits that raise blood pressure, excessive processed carbohydrates, prolonged sedentary time, chronic worry especially at night, and inadequate water intake, are all things you have control over. And the 4 habits that help lower blood pressure, eating potassium-rich foods, practicing daily breathing exercises, getting morning sunlight, and maintaining social connections, are all things you can start implementing today. I have seen patients transform their health by making these changes. I have seen people reduce their medications. I have seen blood pressure readings that seemed permanently elevated finally come down to healthy levels. And I have seen the ripple effects: better energy, better sleep, better mood, better quality of life overall. If any of this resonated with you, please share this video with someone you care about who might benefit from this information. A spouse, a sibling, a friend, a parent. Blood pressure issues affect millions of people, and many of them have never heard this advice. And remember, while these lifestyle changes are powerful, they work best in partnership with your healthcare provider. Please discuss any significant changes with your doctor, especially if you are on blood pressure medication. As your habits improve, your medication needs may change, and that should always be supervised by a medical professional. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I truly appreciate each and every one of you who watches these videos. Your health matters, your quality of life matters, and the choices you make today will shape your tomorrow. Until next time, take care of yourself. You deserve to feel your best at every age.